Good morning and welcome back to our reading and discussion of From Bethlehem to Calvary. And we're going to continue on this morning with the second part of the introductory remarks. So we'll just go ahead and get started right on in. It is of interest to recall that other teachings besides that of Christianity have emphasized these five important crises that occur, if so desired, in the life of those human beings who take their stand upon their essential divinity. Both the Hindu teaching and the Buddhist faith have emphasized them as evolutionary crises, which we may not ultimately escape. And a right understanding of the interrelation of these great world religions may eventually bring about a truer understanding of them all. The religion of the Buddha, though preceding that of the Christ, expresses the same basic truths, but phrases them in a different manner, which can help us nevertheless to a larger interpretation of Christianity. And I know I've been told that this journey is obligatory, and this is our path home. So recognizing that is key there, and then also embracing the religions of the past, at least having a basic understanding can tie what Christ did together for us, because it does all come together at some point, and which should make sense to everyone, because God is not confusing, right? We just can't understand that level of that elevated perspective in our brain. Let's keep going. Buddhism and Christianity find their origins respectively in two inspired moments of history, the life of the Buddha and the life of Christ. The Buddha gave his doctrine to enlighten the world. Christ gave his life. It is for Christians to discern the doctrine. Perhaps in the end, the most valuable part of the doctrine of the Buddha is its interpretation of his life. The teaching of Lao Tzu can also serve the same purpose. Religion must eventually be composite, gathered from many sources and composed of many truths. Yet it is legitimate to feel that if one had to choose at this time one faith, one might choose Christianity, and for this specific reason. The central problem of life is to lay hold upon our divinity and to make it manifest. In the life of Christ, we have the most complete and perfect demonstration, an example of divinity lived successfully on earth, and lived as most of us have to live, not in retirement, but in the full tide of storm and stress. Exponents of all faiths are today meeting to discuss the possibility of finding a platform of such universality and truth that upon it all men may unite, and on which the coming world religion may be based. This may perhaps be found in a clearer interpretation and understanding of these five outstanding episodes, and in their practical and unique relationship not only to the individual, but to humanity as a whole. This realization will bind us more definitely to the past, anchoring us in the truth that was. It will indicate to us our immediate goal and duty, which when understood will enable us to live more divinely, to serve more adequately, and thus to bring the will of God into fruition on earth. It is their inner meaning and our individual relation to them that are of importance. There is nothing but a valuable gain to us, an enriching of our consciousness when we realize the unity and at times the uniformity of the teaching as it is given in both the East and the West. For instance, the fourth event in Christ's life, the crucifixion, finds its parallel in the fourth initiation of the Oriental teaching, which is called the Great Renunciation. This is an initiation called in the Buddhist terminology, the entering of the stream. There is an initiation called in the Buddhist terminology, the entering of the stream. And there is in the life of Jesus an episode which we call the baptism in the Jordan. The story of Christ's birth at Bethlehem can be paralleled in particularly every detail in the lives of earlier messengers from God. These proved facts should surely evoke from us the recognition that though there are many messengers in only one message, but this recognition in no way detracts from the unique task of the Christ and the unique function which he came forth to fulfill. So really, we're not discarding all that has been done to get us to the point where Christ came. So we embrace the whole again. It's a constant process of inclusiveness and adding more to our life and understanding. It is interesting also to bear in mind that these two outstanding individuals, the Buddha and the Christ, have set their seal upon both hemispheres. The Buddha being the teacher for the Orient and Christ the savior of the Occident. We are in the Occident, and the Orient includes India and all out to the east. You can look on a map and it comes up. Whatever may be our personal conclusions as to their relations to the Father in heaven or to each other, the fact stands out past all controversy that they gave the revelation of divinity to their particular civilizations, and that in a most significant manner, they worked together for the eventual benefit of the race. Their two systems are interdependent, and Buddha prepared the world for the message and the mission of Christ. So how beautiful is that? That this unfoldment is includes the whole world, includes the whole earth. This is, if we open our hearts up to this, and we can really begin to see the brotherhood of all humanity. And this requires, this should spark deep contemplation for those who haven't gotten to that point yet, because of course this is what happened. It just makes perfect sense. Why would this not be the plan? Why would we have been left without a messenger? And we found out in the beginning that God does not do anything without a witness and never will. So this all begins to come together. Both embodied in themselves certain cosmic principles, and by their work and sacrifice, certain divine potencies poured through and upon mankind. The work done by the Buddha and the message which he sounded stimulated intelligence into wisdom. Wisdom is a cosmic principle and a divine potency. This the Buddha embodied. But love came to the world through Christ, and he, through his work, transmuted emotion into love. As God is love, the comprehension that Christ revealed the love of God makes clear the magnitude of the task he undertook, a task far beyond the powers of any teacher or messenger who had preceded him. The Buddha when he achieved illumination, let in a flood of light upon life and upon our world problems. In this intelligent understanding of the causes of world distress, he endeavored to formulate into the Four Noble Truths. These are, as most of us well know, one, that existence in the phenomenal universe is inseparable from suffering and from sorrow. Two, that the cause of suffering is desire for existence in the world of phenomena. Three, that cessation of suffering is brought about by eradicating all desire for existence in this universe of phenomena. And four, that the way to the cessation of suffering is by treading the noble eightfold path wherein are expressed right belief, right intentions, right speech, right action, right living, right endeavor, right mindedness, and right concentration. So if we hadn't looked at these teachings before, because we were intimidated by them, or we just didn't want to know, or we didn't believe in that there were messengers, or we didn't understand how deep this goes and that there were messengers from all around the world, then it could look daunting. But when we study this, the teachings Buddha brought make perfect sense for the time that they came. And if we contemplate the Four Noble Truths, and we spend some time meditating on that, we will see that that is absolutely our case. Like this is our condition. We want to be here in this world, right up until we don't. And our desire to be here is what holds us down and keeps us attracted to the things here. And really, I don't want to say stuck. It's a natural process. This is just very natural. But this is also the reason why, you've heard a lot of them, maybe you heard a lot of them say, we have to let go or get drugged or get dragged. So as we start to let go, or, some of us will say, as we start to delete the apps off of our phone, we get closer to the operating system. As we start to rid ourselves of desire, our system becomes more clear and we can begin to receive. I'm going to keep going. He provided a structure of truth, of dogma, and of doctrine, which has enabled many thousands down the centuries to see the light. So right then and there, Buddha's teachings were proven. Enlightenment is not a new concept. Today, Christ and his disciples are occupied, as they have been for 2,000 years, with the same task of bringing enlightenment and salvation to men. Now, the keynote there, today, this morning, right at this very instant, Christ and his disciples are occupied with the same task of bringing enlightenment and salvation to men. That is every moment. Christ has never gone anywhere. The disciples have never gone anywhere. They may be in a different form, different place at the moment, or operating in different ways, but they're all connected still and doing the work. Blows are being struck at the world illusion, and the minds of humanity are arriving en masse at an increasing clarity of thought. Through the message, therefore, of the Buddha, man can, for the first time, grasp the cause of his eternal discomfort, of his constant distaste and dissatisfaction, and of his endless nostalgia. From the Buddha, he can learn the way of release is to be found in detachment, dispassion, and discrimination. These are the first steps on the road to Christ. So here we have it laid out that what Buddha brought are the steps on the road to Christ. And then Christ comes and he proceeded on and brought the newer teachings. It's beautiful. Through the message of Christ, three general concepts emerged into the racial consciousness. First, that the individual, as an individual, is of value. This was a truth which the general Eastern doctrine of rebirth had tended to negate. So I'm just going to throw this out there because this is the first time it kind of came up. The doctrine of rebirth. It's another part of the cyclic manifestation of God. So we cannot learn all the lessons. If we think about this, we cannot learn all the lessons needed in one single life. There's no way. We have so many things to learn here. Why would we even think that would be the case? And why would we be doing what we are doing if we did think that is the case? So if we only had one go at this, we think we would all be minding our P's and Q's and not run around acting selfishly. There are very, very much deeper cosmic attributes. There are happenings that are much deeper going on here. This is not a choice. We have our soul dictates our incarnations, and we're here to learn specific lessons for this incarnation. Because if you it'd be not possible to learn all the lessons in one life. So we do this many, many, many times. And in any esoteric school, really, that's one of the very first teachings, right? And this is not, we can call it esoteric schools, but these teachings are available to the public. We hear about it all the time. And we just need to come to terms with it and then move on. That you are eternal. Christ said they all said it for us, right? This is good news, because if this was our only shot, we would likely be kind of doomed, right? But we're not. We get many opportunities to right our wrongs and learn balance and the lessons that are needed. So I just wanted to throw that out there as the doctrine of rebirth came up, because it's not discussed in exoteric or churchianity or Christianity, even though and it may come up in this book, if not, it's in many other books, but reincarnation and rebirth is in the books. It's there in the Bible. There has to be I want to say a next level understanding of who the characters are from the beginning to the end. And if we have a zoomed out perspective, we can see these characters again and again, essentially in different form. So with that being said, let's keep going on. So first, through the message of Christ, three general concepts emerged into the racial consciousness. First, that the individual, as an individual, is of value. This was a truth which the general Eastern doctrine of rebirth had tended to negate. Time was long, opportunity would endlessly recur, the evolutionary process would do its work. Let mankind therefore drift as a whole with the tide, and eventually all would be well. Hence, the general attitude of the East was failure to emphasize the supreme value of any individual. But Christ came and emphasized the work of the individual, saying, Let your light so shine before men that they can see your good works. And as we dig into some of these other teachings, Christ represented so much to us and set the example for really not that our personalities are gonna be the exact same, but right human relations and non-separativeness are some of the key messages there. How we treat each other and love the whole, and our relationship to all of this. So let your light shine before men that they may see your good works as well, not just his. Second, the opportunity was presented to the race as a whole to take a tremendous step forward, to undergo the new birth or take the first initiation. This we shall deal with in our next chapter. The third concept taught by the Christ was that which embodied the technique of the new age, which was to come when individual salvation and the new birth had been properly grasped. See, we talk about ages and ages past in this, and the new age that's present. This is not, popular terms as we think of them, right? New age is not just a name put on something for a group of people. This is literally, like, you could call it a dispensation, essentially, or but we need to open our minds up and kind of let go of our previous thoughts of all the things that we've heard coming from mainstream, right? Because it goes way, 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 way deeper. So this was the message or command to love our neighbor as ourselves. Individual effort, group opportunity, and identification with each other. This was the message of the Christ. In the teaching of the Buddha, we have the three ways in which the lower nature can be changed and prepared to be a conscious expression of divinity. Through detachment, man learns to withdraw his interest and his consciousness from the things of the senses and to turn a deaf ear to the calls of the lower nature. Detachment imposes a new rhythm upon the man. Through learning the lesson of dispassion, he becomes immune to the suffering of the lower nature as he detaches his interest from secondary things and the non-essentials and centers it upon the higher realities. Now, that can be interesting because, we look at people like that who are turned inward as maybe they're daydreaming, right? And this you can kind of see in young kids, and we did that as well, where we're daydreaming. But what were we daydreaming about? And now as adults, as we grow into this, it's not a daydream, it's returning towards higher realities, but we're still living this life and this outer expression in the face of it, which takes time to get comfortable with. And there are lessons that need to be learned and how to get used to this process, essentially. And then eventually the hope is that we're just doing the things here, we're not attached to them, we know that we have jobs, we know that they need to be done, we have families to support, all of these things, but we let go of our personal attachment to the non-essentials, right? And that is a gradual process. As we wake up, we start to look deeper into the necessity for, say, certain types of entertainment or certain material desires, or like a car or this perfect house. And because we start to recognize that we have everything that we need, if we would just look, it's all there for us. And if it's not there yet, it will be put there as we're starting to make this. We have to we got to lay ourselves down and trust in this. Right? So through the practice of discrimination, the mind learns to select the good, the beautiful, and the true. And that is, discrimination. I think we could probably also add discernment into that, because we're just, as we're looking at these pairs of opposites, essentially, we just start whittling away at what is not needed. And we're starting to get closer and closer and deleting those apps off of our device. And if we're not deleting them, we're just not using them, and we're only using them intelligently when needed. So through the practice of discrimination, the mind learns to select the good, the beautiful, and the true. These three practices, leading to a changed attitude towards life and reality, will, when held sanely, bring in the rule of wisdom and prepare the disciple for the Christ life. So this is preparation for discipleship, right, in a sense. Upon this, racial teaching follows the work of the Christ with humanity, resulting in an understanding of the value of the individual and his self-initiated efforts at release and illumination, with the final objective of group love and group good. We learn to perfect ourselves in consonance with Christ's injunction, "Be ye therefore perfect," in order to have somewhat to contribute to the group good and in order to serve Christ perfectly. Thus, that spiritual reality spoken of by St. Paul as Christ in you, the hope of glory, is released in man and can manifest in full expression. When a sufficient number of people have grasped this ideal, the entire human family can stand for the first time before the portal, which leads to the path of light, and the life of Christ will flower forth in the human kingdom. That kind of sounds like the reappearance of Christ, in a sense, right? Personality then fades out, dimmed by the glory of the soul, which, like the rising sun, disperses the darkness, reveals the life situation, and irradiates the lower nature. It leads to group activity, and self, as we usually understand it, disappears. So the self disappears in light of the whole. So this is our merging, our at one-ment, our enlightenment. This is already happening. The final results of the work of the Christ can be seen portrayed for us in his words to be found in St. John, it's like 17, which it would be of value to all of us to read. Okay, so we need to read John 17 at some point. I should have pulled that up. I don't have the Bible pulled up right now. Individuality, initiation, identification. In these terms, the message of the Christ can be expressed. So individuality, initiation, and identification. This he epitomized when on earth in the words, "I and my Father are one." That great individuality, the Christ, through the process of the 5 great initiations, gave to us a picture of the stages and method whereby identification with God can be brought about. This sentence gives us a keynote to the entire gospel story and constitutes the theme of this book. So many of us have not probably heard that there are new levels of consciousness available to us. And that, if we've only experienced really and stayed in the lower levels, then, we don't know any different. But there's times where we do get glimpses into higher levels of consciousness. But in this case, we're talking about a permanent change. So this is a process, and we have to, give into that process and and give into the purification process and allow our lower nature be transformed. Now, these new levels of consciousness that are available to us after we're initially born again, there's an increase. So at each of these initiations, there is a new, more inclusive, more free experience available to us. And this book gets pretty deep into these things. We're kind of starting off light, but we do go into them, and then our follow-on books will go much, much deeper. So, all right, so the interrelation of the work of the past and of the present as given to us by the great teacher of the East and by the Savior of the West can be expressed as follows. The Buddha brought the method, detachment, dispassion, and discrimination, and Christ, the result, individualism, initiation, and identification. So now we can start to see how Buddhism preceded Christianity and is absolutely of value in bringing us up to speed. And then it was almost, I don't want to say as a prerequisite. I want to say we are not, as Christians, learning these Four Noble Truths and the Noble Eightfold Path. We've not had much exposure to that unless you have already been opened up to studying other practices. And if you have, great. If not, take a look, because we have to build this detachment, dispassion, and discrimination into our life. And then in doing that, it leads to Christ and Christianity and the result of individualism, initiation, and identification. Christ lived his life in that small but significant strip of land, which we call Palestine, the Holy Land. He came to prove to us the possibility of individual attainment. He emerged, as all the teachers throughout the ages seem to have done, out of the Orient, and worked in that country, which seems like a bridge between the Eastern and Western hemispheres. Interesting. Separating two most different civilizations. Modern thinkers would do well to remember that Christianity is a bridging religion. Herein lies its great importance. Christianity is the religion of that transitional period which links the era of self-conscious, individualistic existence to a future group-conscious, unified world. And that's what we all, I think, that's what we look forward to. Right. And then evil is gone. And there's harmony at some point, right? It is outstandingly a religion of cleavage or separation, demonstrating to man his duality and thus laying the foundation for his effort to achieve unity or at-one-ment. The realization of this duality is a most needed stage in man's unfoldment, and the purpose of Christianity has been to reveal this, also to point out the welfare between the lower and higher man, between carnal man and spiritual man, united in one person, and to emphasize the necessity for that lower man to be saved by the higher. So duality, the checkerboard, the black and white checkerboard, or darkness and light, all the polarities, positive and negative, male and female. This is our world that we're living in until we come to terms with what the purpose of that is, essentially, right? There's a lot of knowledge to be gained through the contemplation of the the pairs of opposites. And we really can't get around that spectrum and that polarity here. There's always a lower expression and a higher expression, or a positive and negative. And our goal is to transmute our lower nature and bring into expression our higher nature, values, and attributes. Very, very deep. That's a great contemplation on the pairs of opposites and how they impact and play out in our lives. Christ, therefore, not only unified in himself the past, law, and the prophets, but he also provided that presentation of truth, which could bridge the gap between Eastern belief and philosophy and our Western materialism and scientific attainment, both of them divine expressions of reality. It's all a divine expression of reality, right? Essentially. At the same time, he demonstrated to human beings the perfection of the task which each man could carry forward within himself, bridging that essential duality, which is his nature, and bringing about that at-one-ment of the human and the divine, which is the task of all religions to aid. Each of us has to make of twain or two one new man, so making peace. For peace is unity and synthesis. And we can do this. This is in our power. Again, this is in us to make these changes. Nobody's going to do it for us. If we try to, if you think about this for a second, if we just trust that somebody else is going to do the work for us, we will literally not get anywhere. This is us having to take a stand, run the race, stay the course. All of we have to take stock in ourselves, gird up our loins, and it goes on, and that is very much all biblical. But the lesson and message which Christ brought to the individual man, he brought also to the nations, holding before them the hope of future world unity and world peace, right? He's the world teacher. He came at the beginning of that astronomical age, which we call the Piscean age, because during this period of approximately 2,000 years, our sun is passing through that sign in the zodiac, which we call Pisces, or the fishes. Hence the frequent references to fishes and the appearance of the symbol of the fish in Christian literature, including the New Testament. This Piscean age comes between the previous Jewish dispensation, the 2,000 years wherein the sun was passing through the sign of Aries, the ram, and the Aquarian age into which our sun is now in process of transiting. These are astronomical facts, for I am not here speaking of astrological conclusions. In the period when the sun was in Aries, we find the frequent appearance of the ram or the scapegoat in the Old Testament teaching and the keeping of the Passover feast. In the Christian age, we use the fish symbology, even to eating fish on Good Friday. The symbol of the Aquarian age, as it appears in all the ancient zodiacs, is that of a man bearing a jar of water. The message of that age is one of unity, communion, and our relationship as brothers, because we are all the children of the one Father. To this age, Christ pointed in his instruction to his disciples when he told them to go into the city and said, "When ye are entered into the city, there shall a man meet you, bearing a pitcher of water. Follow him into the house where he entereth in." And that's from Luke 22, 7, 10, 15. This they did, and the great and holy feast of communion was later held in that house. The reference is undoubtedly to the future wherein we enter into that house in the zodiac, which is called the water carrier, and wherein also we shall all sit at the same table and hold communion one with another. The Christian dispensation comes between the two great world cycles, and just as Christ consummated in himself the message of the past and gave the teaching for the present, so he also pointed to that future of unity and understanding, which is our inevitable goal. We are today at the end of the age and entering the period of Aquarian unity, as he foretold. The upper room is a symbol of that high point of achievement towards which we are as a race rapidly moving. Someday the great communion service will be held, of which every communion service is the forecast. We are slowly passing into this new sign. For more than 2,000 years, its potencies and forces will play upon the race and will establish the new types, foster the new expansions of consciousness, and lead man on to practical realization of brotherhood. Thank goodness. We all, if we've spent some time studying the Bible, you can see astrology in there. This is probably one of the things, and if it's not, I'll just say it was one of the things that pushed me. Was you start to see how astrology and the signs and seasons, which is also astrology, play into the big picture of the story. And it starts from the very beginning at Genesis, and it works all the way through. And I'll say the very beginning, it started in the beginning. This is what our system is essentially founded on as we dig in. Now, that's, for another time, but I'll just say that's why our website and channel is called Warriors Charts, right? Because the study of astrology very much allows us to get to know ourselves better. I mean, it's a huge piece of the puzzle in understanding the deepness. If we're not ready for that, then we're not ready for that. That's not an issue. When we see it for ourselves, that's when it becomes the issue, right? And that's when we want to open up in order. There's so much to know there. It's a massive field of study, and I by no means know, not even scratching the surface. But our astrologer and our mentor is absolutely bringing to us the most elevated perspective that we can get, as she has walked the path much further ahead of us. And we're lucky to have her helping us through all this. So again, we got to keep an open mind about the depth of this, right? Because nobody's saying that Christ didn't do these things. All they're saying is there's a foundation, the gospel and others, just not it, there's cosmic laws and there's other things taking place in the background that we need to get comfortable with and begin to see and open our minds to, if we want to let go of the other side and detach ourselves from what we've been told on the earth, on the physical plane rather. It is interesting to note how it was that the energies playing upon our planet when the sun was in Aries, the ram, produced in religious symbology the emphasis of the goat or the ram, and how in our present age of Pisces, the fishes, those influences have colored our Christian symbology so that fish preponderates in our New Testament and our eschatological symbology. The new incoming rays, that's a very deep study, the incoming rays, that's part of the aegis wisdom. There's 7 rays, which makes sense. And we will get into the books eventually that have all that, but you can study at the Moria Federation, the Rays and Initiations, and a treatise on white magic, a treatise on cosmic fire. He's got all of those if you want to jump ahead. But understanding the rays also helps us understand what we're looking at as a whole and in ourselves as well. The new incoming rays, energies, and influences must surely be destined to produce equal effects, not only in the realm of physical phenomena, but also in the world of spiritual values. The atoms of the human brain are being awakened as never before, and those millions of cells which we are told are to be found inactive and dormant in the human brain may be brought into functioning activity, bringing with them that intuitive insight which will recognize the coming spiritual revelation. Now, I'm radioactive. I'm waking up. I feel it in my bones. Do we know, if you know where I'm going with that? These are many popular songs talking about that science, this process. It's not just all in our mind or in our other bodies. It's physical as well. So we do get radiated, and it does potentially, for some, have a physical realization to it, or you can actually feel it in the body as we're becoming awakened, you could say. And that is part of the early ascension symptoms that you might have heard about. But there is science behind this. It is biology. It's all of these things. So, and we can know what it is, and we can see for ourselves that these things are actually happening, right? So we are not left in the dark and completely in the dark at all. If we look closely, we can see the process in motion, right? And observe it. Today, the world is reorienting itself to the newer influences, and in the processes of readjustment, a period of temporary chaos is inevitable. Christianity will not be superseded. It will be transcended, its work of preparation being triumphantly accomplished, and Christ will again give us the next revelation of divinity. If all that we know now, or all that we now know of God, is all that can be known, the divinity of God is but a limited matter. What the new formulation of truth will be, who can say? But the light is slowly pouring into men's hearts and minds, and in this lighted radiance, they will vision the new truths and arrive at a fresh enunciation of the ancient wisdom. Through the lens of the illumined mind, man will shortly see aspects of divinity hitherto unknown. May there not be qualities and characteristics of the divine nature which are as yet totally unrecognized and unknown? Can there not be revelations of God utterly unprecedented and for which we have no words or adequate means of expression? Of course, right? The ancient mysteries, so shortly to be restored, must be reinterpreted in the light of Christianity and readapted to meet modern need, for we can now enter into the holy place as intelligent men and women, and not as children looking on at dramatic stories and procedures in which we as individuals play no conscious part. Christ enacted for us the dramatic story of the 5 initiations and urged us to follow his steps. For this, the past era has prepared us, and we can now pass intelligently into the kingdom of God through the process of initiation. The fact that the historical Christ existed and walked on earth is the guarantee to us of our own divinity and our ultimate achievement. The fact of the mythic Christ appearing again and again down the ages proves that God has never left himself without witness, and that always there have been those who have achieved. The fact of the cosmic Christ manifest as the urge towards perfection in all the kingdoms of nature proves the fact of God and is our eternal hope. Humanity stands at the portal of initiation. Well, friends, this gets, the plot thickens, and the plot continues to thicken. And even as our world opens up, the plot then continues to thicken more and more. And it's told to us by some who have attained that it's really a never-ending process, and a process of identification and closer identification with God at every step. If we, I'm just going to say this before I shut down. We consider enlightenment maybe an Eastern thing, potentially, right? And we think of some guru or somebody in a cave meditating, or everybody flocking to him and falling at his feet and whatnot. This is not how this is in actuality. I'm not saying that that's everybody's take on that, but that is probably a common take in the collective. But this is happening to people all around the world all the time. It's here for us now. And it's a very beautiful thing to have this opportunity and to recognize that it's real and we can do this ourselves. What more can we possibly ask for? Nothing, actually. Because once we start to discriminate what our desires are here, we find that nothing here can bring us what we want anyway, and that the place where everything we want is now available to us. So this is the good news, and that's the second part of the introductory remarks. We will probably do the third on, I'll come back on Monday, most likely, because it's the weekend. And we have other videos that we do too. So we'll get back up, and then there's one more section, maybe one more day to the introductory remarks. And then we'll get into the first initiation, where things start to get very interesting. And we see how this process actually begins to play out in our own being, and where this goes, where we might have been, where we're going, and we can start to be much more aware of all this. So have a great weekend, and we'll see you again soon. Thanks.